Hey guys, welcome to week 4 in success skills. I want to, in this video, just walk you guys through how to utilize Microsoft Word. I think for the most part, a lot of people have experience with Microsoft Word. Maybe we had to type a document or something in high school, or maybe even for college. And, we probably created this document and discovered a lot of different things just by playing around on Microsoft Word. For the most part, that's kind of how we figure things out on there. So it was a lot of just learn by doing, I think. But there's a lot of things that I want to walk you guys through today. I want to make sure that we do have the basics down when it comes to utilizing Microsoft Word. But also, there may be some things that we go through today that may be some things that we aren't too familiar with and that may be new to us. The idea is to make sure that in the event that we do have to type up a paper for something or create some type of document, whether it be for school or our company that we're working for in the future, that we can do it instead of just playing around with it. We can do it very quickly and very efficiently, and we can do it without having to learn in that moment. So I'm going to walk you guys through this today. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys. I have an unedited resume on the screen here, and I'm actually going to do a couple things to that resume to make you guys familiar with it. Before I get started with making the changes that I want to make with this resume, I want to just talk to you guys a little bit about Microsoft Word. Microsoft Office itself is what's called a suite, meaning that Microsoft Office contains a lot of different programs. Not just Microsoft Word, but we also have Excel that we will touch on in the end of the quarter. We also have Microsoft PowerPoint. Every week I walk you guys through a PowerPoint that, again, I typically provide to you guys, but if you ever have to create a PowerPoint, a type of presentation, that is also part of the Microsoft Office suite. In fact, if I go down here to my start menu, maybe you guys can see this. I hope you guys can. I use PowerPoint pretty often, so there's on my most used items there. But if I were to go down to Microsoft Office and click on that, you guys will see that there's all kinds of different things that are part of the Office suite. But those 3 things that I just mentioned are actually your 3 most commonly used programs that are part of Microsoft Office. All of those programs all look kind of similar to this. And what you're looking at here, we have this big part right here that has this, when you start Microsoft Word brand new and you just have a blank document, this is your document window. It contains the document. In this case, we have some stuff already typed up on this document, but that's where you'll utilize, and that's where you're going to be in most of the time, where we're going to be to work with this particular document. Whether we're typing up a paper or we're creating some type of brochure, there's all kinds of different things you can do on here. Resume is something that you guys will all do. At the end of your program, you guys take a class called Professional Development, and you guys will all have the opportunity to build your own resume. And in the same aspect, whether you're doing that for class, but also all of you guys are going to apply to a jobs at some point after you guys graduate, or even right before you graduate, and you'll want to have a resume prepared for that. So that's why I chose to work with a resume today. Most of your Microsoft Office programs have up here at the top the area that contains all of these different buttons and commands. That is referred to as the ribbon. So if I ever talk to you guys about the ribbon, I'm talking about this entire area up here. The ribbon, as you guys can see, is divided into different tabs. So I'm hovering over those right now: Home, Insert, Page Layout, References, Mailings, Review, and View. Those are tabs. You can click on those particular tabs and it opens up a brand new set of commands. We won't utilize too much of all of these tabs today. There's all kinds of different things that you can do that you may have a chance to work with a little bit later. For example, I clicked on the Mailings tab. What's really cool about Microsoft Word, and what I utilize kind of often at ATA. I use mail merge. Mail merge is really helpful when you're creating a set of labels or envelopes or something. You can actually create, and that's what you have up here, envelopes and labels, and mail merge helps you to grasp a document from somewhere else. Like what I do, for instance, I use mail merge when I'm creating all of the class folders that I make for ATA. So these guys that you sign in with every single day. So these guys, if you guys recognize your sign-in sheet for your on-campus classes, all of the folders have these different labels on the top of them, and I use mail merge to create these labels because we have an Excel spreadsheet that has all of the different classes on there, and I can use mail merge to simply just import that, or yeah, I guess it would be an import, but I can take that Excel spreadsheet and I can create a whole bunch of these labels onto Microsoft Word, and then it just prints off for me, and it's super, super easy. So there's all kinds of different things that you can do on Microsoft Word, but today we're just going to take a look at editing a document. So up here in the ribbon, again, I mentioned that they're all divided into different tabs. I'm going to go back to the Home tab. The Home tab contains your most commonly used commands in that particular program. We will discuss this again when we look at Microsoft Excel, what the Home tab looks like on that one. But each tab you can see is divided into then different groups, and they have different names. For instance, on the Home tab we have the Clipboard group. The Clipboard contains your commands such as copy and paste, and a few other things that we'll take a look at. Your font group, this is going to be where we can go to edit our font. So when we're changing the font color, the font size, the type of font, if we're going to bold it, all kinds of different things there. Our paragraph group, so how we can align our paragraph to the right or to the left or to the center. We can use the paragraph group when we're creating a bottom border, background color, different bullets. We use our paragraph group for that. And then we have our styles and our editing group. So those are all the different groups. I'm not going to go through all of the different tabs and all the different groups, but we'll utilize a couple of those today. And again, if I'm referring to a particular group, that's where you find the name of that. Each group, or not each one, but some of them, every once in a while, you'll see there's this little arrow at the bottom of that bottom right-hand corner of that group. What that is called is referred to as the launcher. If you see, I hover over that, the one for the font group. If I click on that button, it actually opens up a little bit more for that font group. So there's more things that I can do. A lot of these things, like the font style, and font size, are all up in that ribbon. But there's a few more things you can do if you wanted to have some type of effect, like a shadow or strike through. There's all kinds of other things you can do to edit that font, and that is here in the launcher. And we may or may not have a chance to work with that today. Okay, paragraph group, very similar. So I want to show you guys on this, a lot of these things, like I said, you're pretty familiar with, and you may have discovered these things. If you notice, as I hover over all of the different commands today, it tells me what that particular command does. Like right now I'm hovering over the bold button in our font group, and you can see it tells me that that is bold. What it does right underneath it, it tells me that it makes the selected text bold, so it tells me exactly what it does. And then it also gives me, if there is one, it gives me a keyboard shortcut. When I have something selected, if I hit Control B, it will bold that for me without having to click on that button. It makes it a little bit easier if you do choose to use those keyboard shortcuts. We'll discover today that there's actually multiple ways to utilize the same command in just different ways. And so we'll see that today. So once again, looking at the screen here, you guys can see I have created a resume that looks pretty bland because everything is the same font, it is the same size. All I did is I did this a little bit differently, and that's actually not quite supposed to look like that, but that's okay. URLs, if you ever did this, may not have these different cells in it. That was just a way that was edited for me, but if you just create a list, that's fine. But that's kind of what I've done here, is I've created a resume where I just typed it out, and now it's time to edit. And that's what we're going to work with today. The reason why I'm doing this today is your all's midterm will be very, very similar. What you guys are going to do on your midterm, I will give you guys a resume like this, and it will be your job to make some editing changes to it. I will provide to you guys a list of changes that I want you guys to make to that particular document. And once you've made those changes, you'll save it and then send it to my email. So just I'll be able to make sure that you made the correct changes. So a lot of the things we're going to do, all those things that we're going to do on the midterm, we're going to do those things today. So you are going to be familiar with it. So what we're going to take a look at first, on any resume, you want the person's name to stand out. You want that person to have all their information, their contact information at the top. So I've already done that, and I've actually, and sometimes what happens, and I should have done this before, when you start typing, everything is automatically left aligned. As you can see, everything, so this is really what this should have looked like. Well, if we were to just type, then everything is going to be automatically, like I said, on the left side of the document, as you guys can see here. What we want, and you'll notice that if you were to ever look up different resumes, you would notice that there's all kinds of different styles that you can use for the header information up here. So all that contact information, people design it all kinds of different ways. We're going to stick with kind of a basic technique today. What I want you guys to utilize, and oftentimes we do this when we're creating resumes, we use what's called the header. The header of a document is the very top of the document. Oftentimes people use this on resumes to put the contact information, but sometimes people use it to put a title of a document, and it helps to make sure that the title shows up on every page. Sometimes when you put page numbers on the top of a page, you can use the header. Oftentimes people use the footer for the page number, but that's what the header and footer is. You can actually get to the header of your document in two different ways. One, you can go to the Insert tab. If you click on the Insert tab, you'll notice there's all kinds of different things that you can insert into your document, including pictures and tables and clip art, all kinds of cool things. You'll notice in the middle of that tab, we have the header and footer tool, or the header and footer group. You can either you can click on header. What it's going to do is it's going to give you a drop-down menu, and you can select from the different options. I'm going to actually just select the blank option. And what that does is it moves me to the header of my document. Don't be alarmed when you see that the document itself gets a little faded. It is just simply showing that I am in the header at this time and not in the document. As soon as I get out of the header, the document will look normal again. So that was one way we could do that. I'm actually going to go over here to the right-hand side and close the header footer tool. So actually, I meant to delete that. Okay, so let's close the header footer tool. The other way that you can get into your header is actually a whole lot simpler. When you're in your document, you notice that your insertion point, this little flashing line in the middle of your document, is in your document. If you hover your I-beam pointer, which is just the little I in your document, when you go up to the top of your screen, it becomes this arrow. At that point, if you just double click, you have now moved into the header. And you can go back to the document and double click, and you're now into the document itself. So you can go back and forth to that. What I will have you guys do on the midterm, very similar to this, is I want you guys to move that person's contact information to the header. Anytime you want to move information in Microsoft Word, you can use cut and paste. It's quite simple. I'm going to just select Candace Coding's contact information, so the whole group right here, Candace Coding, her address, her phone numbers, and her email address. So I've just held down my mouse and selected everything, and then I released my mouse to keep it selected. What I'm going to do is you can actually cut this information. You can either cut using the clipboard group up here by clicking the cut button itself, or as we've probably discovered before, you can right click that information and click cut on this shortcut menu. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to click cut. Don't be alarmed that it disappears. When you cut, it goes to the clipboard. If you ever want to see your clipboard, you can click the little launcher on the, again, remember the launcher is the arrow in the bottom right-hand corner of that particular group. If you click the launcher on the clipboard group, you will see that there is your clipboard. What I just cut is on that clipboard. So anytime you copy something or cut something, it will show up here on the clipboard. I'm going to actually click the X on this to get this out of my way to bring the document up bigger again. So don't worry, it's still there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to double click to go into the header, and I'm going to right click again. And you'll notice there's nothing to copy or cut right now. That is not available for me, but I can paste because I do have something on the clipboard. So I'm going to paste at this point, and now all of Candace Coding's information is now in the header. Why the heck did I just do that? Oftentimes the header moves that information closer to the top of that document, and that can be really, really helpful. As a resume, typically you only want a resume to only be one page. You don't want it to go more than one page. When somebody, an employer, is reading your resume, they don't want to just read a whole book of information, and oftentimes they're turned off by something longer than a page. So I want to try to be able to fit as much information as I can onto this document, so oftentimes putting it into the header makes that pretty helpful. So now that it's in the header, you can see it's a little bit closer to the top of the document. Okay, with us still in the header, I don't want you guys to get out of the header. Well, I'm saying don't you guys. You guys are just watching me right now. You guys aren't doing this. I'll have you guys do something later. But with this information in the header, I want you guys to do something else to her information. One, again, we want this information to stand out. We want to make sure that whoever's reading this can clearly see. If I'm Candace Coding, I want everybody to see my information. So I'm actually going to put this information in the center. And this is something you'll do on the midterm too. I want you guys to simply select that information. And I'm going to go back to the Home tab. With this information selected, if you see in the paragraph group, all of your alignment tools here, you can see right now everything by default is aligned to the left. But the button right next to it is our center align button. I'm going to go ahead and click that, and because all of the only information that I had selected was just her, her name and contact information, only that will move to the center. So again, if you want to change any alignment or anything, or on anything, I should say, you need to select that information. So I want that to be in the center. So now I'm going to click out of it, but stay in the header. I'm just clicking one time outside of that to deselect all of that information, so you can see that all of it is in the center now. One other thing you typically want to do on a resume is you want your name to stand out more than anything. So what I want to do, if I'm Candace Coding, I want my name to stand out more. Right now, default font is called Calibri. And the default font size is 11. What I want to do is I want to make my name a little bit bigger. So I'm going to do a couple things. So I'm going to select my name, and you're going to do this on the midterm too. Let's make that size 14, so to make it stand out quite a bit. And then let's also bold it. So underneath the font, so we made it size 14 by going to the font size arrow here. You can also change font size by using this grow font button and then decrease font. These two buttons are very helpful if you're just trying to play around with a font and you want to see what it looks like a little bit bigger, looks like a little bit smaller. But even if you select this down arrow next to the number on the font sizes, as you hover over the different font sizes, notice that on your document, the name will change for me so I can see what looks good and what doesn't. Obviously size 72, not ideal. So size 14 is perfect. So I'm going to select 14, and then we're going to go ahead and now bold it. In that same font group, your font styles are right here, bold, italic, and underline, and I'm going to select bold. Okay, so now I'll click out of that, and you can see that Candace Coding's name stands out more than anything, and that's what I want. Okay, so now I want to go ahead and get out of my header. I'm finished with the header. So I'm gonna go ahead and get out of that by double clicking down here in my document. Okay, so now I'm in my document. There's a whole lot of things that I want to do to this document because, again, all I've done so far is just typed this document out, and now I need to make all kinds of changes to it. I want some different things to take place. This is a pretty standard resume. Most of your resumes have 3 sections: a qualification section, an education section, and an experience section. Here we have a certification section as it's part of education, but we'll look at it as a different section here. But your 3 most common are qualifications, education, and experience. Sometimes people have other sections, and that is totally fine. With qualifications, as you can see, I am acting like this person is a coder. They went to school for coding, so they went to ATA for coding. So a lot of this person's qualifications involve their coding skills and the things that they learned as a coder. When you're typing out qualifications, you don't want to just only contain job-specific skills, such as this person working knowledge of ICD-9 CM, CPT coding. Those are specific job-specific skills for coding. However, you also want to include your what's called transferable skills. So Candace Coding down here included things like team player, flexible and adaptable, skilled in project management, working knowledge of audit practices, although that's helpful with coding, ability to supervise and lead a group. When I say transferable skills, you want to include skills that can go with you from one job to the next, no matter what the job may be. Obviously, team player, flexible, and adaptable will be helpful when she works in the coding field, but that would be helpful if she worked at Burger King. That would be helpful if she was going to work at a bank. That would be helpful if she was going to work as a teacher. Again, they're transferable. They would go from any job to the next. Why we want to include those is because we want to see all of the person's talents. We want to see what all they can do, and we want to make sure that they have the, abilities like this to work, in a flexible, environment. So that's really helpful to have. So make sure when you create a resume that you include those things. Now, with that being said, I have created this list, and I have a lot of blank space over here on the other side of my resume. On a resume, you definitely don't want any blank space, especially because if you can see, if I scroll down, I've gone down to the second page. You can see my header is still there. That's, one thing that happens when you're using a header. But again, I still only want one page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up to my qualifications, and I'm going to put these into 2 columns. How you put a list into columns, once you've typed up this list, I'm going to go ahead and now select the list. With that list selected, go up to the ribbon and click on Page Layout. And right underneath that tab name, you can see that there's margins, orientation, size, and columns. I want to go ahead and select that columns button, and then I'm going to select 2. And you'll notice what it does is it goes ahead and puts that into 2 columns for me. It just kind of splits it evenly. I want to do one other thing with this. So I'm going to keep that selected. And you could do this one first or second. You could put it in columns and then do this like I'm getting ready to, or you could do this and then put it in columns. But with lists, anytime you have a list on a resume or on really any document, it's really helpful for the reader, the person who's reading it, to have some type of marking to show that this is a next point on the list. Bullets. Bullets are super helpful when you're creating a list of some sort. So back on the Home tab, again, I still have my list selected here. In the paragraph group, that's where our bullets were located. There's numbers. If you're creating a list that requires numbers, there's a button for that too. But I'm going to go ahead and select the bullets button. And notice there is an arrow next to that bullets button. You do not have to click the arrow. The arrow simply just gives you different bullet options. On a resume, I recommend just using the default bullet. So that would just be clicking right on the button. You'll notice what that does is it will go ahead and create bullets for me, and that makes that a little bit easier to see there. Okay, when this was first typed out, it looks like there were some cells that were created. So that won't be there when I print this out, and that won't be there when you create a resume either, so don't worry about that. Okay, then we get down to our education section. I want to point out that our education section is pretty standard. This is actually pretty, set up pretty well. Notice that if you have any type of college experience, and again, when you guys create the resume, you're going to put college on there. You're going to put ATA college. What you're going to do is you're going to put both your education section and your experience section will be the exact same here, meaning that they're going to go in reverse chronological order. What you want in both your education and your experience section, you want to put your most recent experience first. So you'll put ATA college, and if you have any other previous college experience, that will go next. So it's that reverse order, reverse time order. So your most recent first. Same thing with jobs. With your experience, you'll have your most recent job first, and then you'll have the next job underneath that. So for education, I have ATA college. You may or may not choose to put Louisville, Kentucky. Oftentimes people do, and that's pretty standard on resumes. You want to put what you studied. So for this person, they put associate's degree, professional medical coding, and definitely explain what kind of degree you're receiving or diploma. And then you put the dates over on the side. To fill up the space on the right side, we don't have a column, that we could put like we did in the qualification section. We can't separate this into columns and fill up that space. So you want to put your date over on the right-hand side. This person, we just chose to put the graduation date, and that is totally fine with college. This person at the University of Louisville decided to put Candace Coding is who I'm talking about when I say this person, the time that she was at the University of Louisville. Looks like she was there for a little while. But again, these are made up dates. But so you can choose either or. You can put the day that you started at ATA and put it to the day that you completed at ATA. And again, some people just choose to put their graduation date. So this person put just December of 2010, and that is fine either way. This person did add their GPA. You do not have to put your GPA on a resume, but if your GPA is a 4.0 and you want to brag, a resume is a great opportunity to brag on yourself. So I do recommend that if you have that. This person had a little bit of experience at U of L. She put University of Louisville, put when she was there, and put that she was studying biology, and then put that she only completed 96 hours. And that is okay. It does show you have some experience at a different college, and so you want to add that. Notice that these were spaced out so that they do look separate. We can see ATA is on its own, and the University of Louisville is on its own as well. And then notice that there is no high school information on here. Once you have college experience, employers are not looking for high school information, so you want to exclude that from your resume. No need to put that on a resume any longer. This person did decide to add certification information. She said, because again, she is maybe turning in this resume before she has completed her graduation, and she put that when she will be taking these certification exams. You could do something of a similar type situation. If you're turning in a resume to an employer before your graduation date, which a lot of people do, you may want to put when you plan on taking certification exams. If you already have the certifications, you can add those here. Okay, so I'm not going to do too much to the education section just yet. For the experience section, Candace Coding only has one job she put on here, but again, you want to make sure that this goes in reverse chronological order. What's great about you guys, you all can actually use your externships as experience on your resumes. So if you're creating a resume right now and you're using that to submit to an employer and you don't have your externship yet, I definitely don't recommend putting an externship on your resume, as that would be lying. But if you are just wanting to play around and you want to create a resume and want to create a resume as if you've already completed that and you're getting ready to, if you're pretending like you're getting ready to graduate, you're welcome to play around with that, and you can put on a fake externship if you want to. But your externship is something that does qualify as experience. So you could put the name of the company that you worked for, and then typically underneath, as this person, as Candace Coding, she worked at Paradise Tomato Kitchen in Louisville, Kentucky. You will typically right underneath, and you can see it's indented just a little bit, so spaced a little bit away from where it lines up with the job itself. but to show that it's a little bit separate, is the title of the position you held at that company. So if you're using your externship, you could put student extern, or you can even write ATA externship, and you could put the amount of hours that you had at that externship. I wish I had the other sample resumes here for you and I could show you what I mean by that. But that's a great way to add that. But then what you'll do underneath where you have your, and again, there's dates when you started and when you finished. And then if you had any other previous jobs before that, you would put that underneath this job. So a little bit separate from this one. This person, again, what you'll do after you write the name of the company that you worked for and the title that you held at that company, then you have a list of job duties that you performed at that company. At Paradise Tomato Kitchen, Candace Coding did a number of different things as a quality assurance technician. Once again, I have a list, and with lists, we want to make sure that we are able to see that this is a list. So I'm going to once again add bullets. So I'm going to select this list again, or not again, I'm going to select this list, but I'm going to do the same thing I did earlier. I'm going to go up to the paragraph group and just simply click on that bullets button, and you can see it adds those bullets for me. And now that's a lot easier to read this document. Okay, so once again, we've just added some bullets in there. Okay, so far everything is looking great. However, with resumes, you really want to make sure your sections stand out so that it doesn't look like everything is the same. And again, as a reader, as somebody who's reading this document, I want to be able to look and see where Candace Coding's experience is. I want to know where Candace Coding's education is. So I want the words experience and education and qualifications, again, all the section names, to stand out more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the qualifications word up there at the top. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to do a couple different things to the word qualifications here. One, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. So I'm going to actually make it size 12, not much bigger, but it is a little bit bigger. And I'm going to make it bold. I'm going to do one other thing. I want to explain on this one the difference between, some of you guys may be familiar with underline. As again, underline, if you were to select that, underline adds an underline to the word qualification. See what that looks like right there? The difference between underline, I'm actually going to deselect the underline there. The difference between underline and bottom border over here in the paragraph group, the very far right bottom button in the paragraph group is called bottom border. If I select that button, and again, this one does have an arrow, and the arrow does give me all kinds of different options for borders. If I want it on top or left or right, there's all kinds of different options here. But the default is just to be on the bottom. So I can just click the button, bottom border, and notice it does a little bit more than just underline the word qualifications. It actually puts a border across the entire page, across the document there. And that's the difference between underline and bottom border. So if I deselect that word qualifications, notice how my qualifications section stands out tremendously now. Now I can see as a reader exactly where the qualifications section is, and I know where to go for that. But I want my resume to be really uniform. I want the word education, well, not certification, because I'm going to actually put that as if it's part of education. I want the words education and experience to stand out the same way. Yes, I could go and now select education and do the same 3 things that I did to the word qualifications. But here's something that might be a little bit easier. I'm going to go back and select the word qualifications. With the word qualifications selected, I want to show you guys how we can use Format Painter. Format Painter, you'll notice, is in the clipboard group. You guys are probably familiar with copy and paste. If I were to click copy, what would happen is I would copy the word qualifications. Format Painter works very similarly. What it does, instead of copying the word, it copies the format. So meaning if I click on Format Painter with Format Painter selected there, anything, notice that when I move around the document, notice that my I-beam pointer, which is, it's just the little cursor that's in the middle of the screen, the eye has a little paintbrush next to it. That shows me that my Format Painter is on, so anything I select at this point If I select it, we'll now be given that same format as the word qualifications. Remember, with the word qualifications, we did 3 things. We made it size 12, we bolded it, and then I also added the bottom border. So let's select the word education, and then as soon as I let go, those 3 things happen. Notice that with that word education selected, there you can see my font is now size 12, it is now bold, and now the bottom border button is on as well. The Format Painter button is now off, meaning you can see there's no paintbrush as I move around, but I still have to do the same thing to the word experience. Here's something a little bit better. I'm gonna actually undo that. So you're thinking, wait a minute, why do I need to undo that? You don't need to, I just wanna show you guys something cool. So I'm gonna go back to the word qualifications. And again, I want to use Format Painter. Since I'm gonna actually use the format that's in the word qualifications multiple times, there is a way to leave your Format Painter button on. Instead of just clicking one time on Format Painter, I'm actually going to double click it. When I double click it, what that does is, again, as I move around, you can see my paintbrush is still here. I can select the word education. As soon as I let go, the word education becomes that format. It doesn't change the word qualifications. Again, I've just copied the format. But notice that the paintbrush is still there. That is because by double clicking it, I left that Format Painter on, and now I can go apply that same change down here to the word experience. So I'm going to select the word experience and let go, and there the same changes are made to that word as well. Now be careful. Sometimes when you double click the word when you double click Format Painter, you leave it on, and sometimes we forget that we've left it on and we go make all kinds of changes, and all of a sudden everything on our screen looks the same. So we need to go back up to the clipboard group, click Format Painter, and that will turn it off. So now you can see as I move around the document, that paintbrush is no longer with me. Okay, but now as you look at this document, you can see where my qualifications are, where my education section is, and where the experience section is, and it looks a lot better. Okay, let's see. One other thing that I want you guys to be familiar with on the midterm, notice that as I keep scrolling down here, I still, even though there's no terms down here, there's no words on the second page, if I were to send this document to somebody else, they may still see that there's 2 pages there. One thing we can do, even if we have maybe 1 line of text on the second page, another way we can mess with the spacing, there's actually a couple different things that you can do. One, we're not going to need to do this, but I want to show you guys this in case you ever come across something like this. And you can find this in different spots. But if I'm just going to click in the word experience just to show you guys this. You can do one of 2 things. One, I can click on the page layout tab, and here in the paragraph group on the page layout tab, you can see that there is a before and after spacing. You can also find that on the home tab. If I open up, so there's a paragraph group in the home tab as well. If I click on the launcher, in the middle of that, you can see there's the before and after spacing. Right now it's at 0 point, but if I ever wanted to change the spacing, right now what it's referring to when it says before spacing is 0 and after spacing is 0, it's talking about where my cursor is in the document. It's talking about the line above the word experience is currently 0 point, and after the word experience is 0 too. If I ever wanted to change that spacing, I could simply just, click that arrow button and change and it will change for me. Again, like I said, you can do that here, but you can also do it on that page layout tab. I actually don't want to add any more space or decrease any more space. It's actually looking pretty good as it is, but sometimes that's helpful if you ever need to change your spacing. Sometimes things get crazy spaced apart, and that's really helpful to have that. You can change your before and after spacing really easily there. Okay, but another thing that you can do is you can change your margins. What I mean by margins are this blank space from the edge of the document to where your text begins. You have a margin on the left side over here. You have a margin on the right side as well. Notice that the bottom border stops at a certain point. You actually have a margin up at the top, from the top to where Candace Coding's name begins. And even at the bottom of the document too, you notice that there's a space between the bottom of the paper and then where that text ends. You can actually change that. Up at the page layout tab, if you remember when we went there for our columns, there was also a margins button. Now, in order to change your margins, if you're trying to change margins to the entire document, you must select the entire document. So I'm going to go down to the very bottom where the last part of the resume says certified to participate in audits by Yum Brands. I'm going to select that and go all the way up to the top with my mouse and then make sure that qualifications is selected and then let go. I want to make sure that this applies to the entire document. If you click on the margins button, there's a couple different options. You can actually change, just like default right now is 1 inch away from the edge of the paper. You notice right now we have normal margins, which are all at the top, bottom of the page, left and right are all 1 inch. You can select different options if maybe you want to make your margins very narrow. We're going to actually do that in just a second, and I'll show you what that looks like. If you want to make it a little bit wider, you can use moderate, which only changes the left and right margins to 3/4 of an inch, which is a slight change, but sometimes it's just enough to pull some text up off that second page. And you can actually customize your margins too. At the very bottom, custom margins, if I were to select that, you can actually type in numbers or use the arrows to customize how much space you want away from the edge of your paper. I'm going to cancel that. And instead, again, very helpful. I just want to show you guys kind of the drastic change that takes place when you change these to narrow margins. In fact, on the midterm next week, I think I have you guys, one of the changes is to select narrow margins. So with the entire paper selected, I'm going to click margins, I'm going to click narrow, and I want you guys to see what happens to the text as soon as I click this. When I click narrow, you'll notice that again, everything kind of spaces out. Notice that the edge of the paper, I'm going to deselect this if it would let me, there it goes. Notice that the edge of the paper to where the text begins is a lot smaller now. There's a lot less white space. And as I scroll down, you'll notice that I definitely no longer have an extra page, and that's because that's pulled everything up by moving everything to the sides of the paper. So narrow margins sometimes are great if you're trying to pull up a lot of text. Sometimes you want to make sure that it looks pretty good, and sometimes you don't want to use narrow margins on a resume. You may choose to use just moderate margins, and that may be enough. Like if I went back and selected everything and just used moderate, where it just takes the left and right just a little bit closer to the edge than default, so it doesn't look as different. You'll notice that I've now gone back to one page. I'm actually going to hit the delete button here and see if that works. Yeah, sometimes that works. The delete button will delete any space that's to the front, different than backspace. We know backspace, if I were to click that, would delete that S in the word brands. But if I click the delete button, delete deletes forward. And so I was actually on that second page, or had a second page, because there was some extra space. And if I hit delete, it deletes everything after Yum Brands and deleted that space for me. So sometimes that helps too. Okay, but that's all I really wanted to show you guys in this video here. I wanted you guys to be familiar with a couple of things, some things that you guys are going to want to know for your midterm next week. Make sure you're familiar with how to add a header, or how to move text into a header, like we did here with Candace Coding's header here, her contact information. Remember, you can just double click to go in and out of that header. So I want you guys to be familiar with that. I want you guys to be familiar with how to change font. So like we did, where we're changing the font itself, changing the size of the font, changing the effects of the font, what we did with bold. And then again, the bottom border. Don't forget the bottom border is quite different than underline, as sometimes people confuse the two. So remember how to make a bottom border, and also how to put columns into multiple columns. So you take a list and you can select it, select columns, and then just change it to 2. And then also how you add bullets. So again, those are just a couple changes you guys will look at with the midterm, some things I want you guys to be familiar with. So here's what I want you guys to do as your activity today for this week. What I want you guys to do is just create a sample resume for me. I want you guys to make sure that the things we did to this resume are things that you include in yours. I want to make sure that your contact information is in the header. I want you guys to also make sure that your name stands out. You can make it as unique as you want to. You don't want to make it to where it's ridiculous, meaning you don't want to use crazy fonts. You want to make sure that you're pretty standard. But you want to make sure that your name stands out, so make sure you're using bold and maybe changing it to a little bit bigger. It doesn't have to be a particular size or a particular font. You make that your own, but make sure you're using the header. Make sure you have a qualifications and education and an experience section. I want you guys to utilize bold. I want you guys to utilize, again, that you want your sections to stand out a little bit here. So maybe make them a little bit bigger. Make sure you're utilizing the bottom border as well. So you'll create a list in your qualifications, and you'll want to make sure that list is in 2 columns and also bulleted. With your education, you can do it very similar to this. You may not have any previous college experience, and that's okay. Make sure you have your ATA college experience, and that is totally fine if that is all you have. What some people choose to do in their education section to fill up their resume a little bit more, they add a section with their classes in it. So they put a section, some people call it classes, some people call it related courses, and they put that in there. So if that's helpful, you can add that in there. And then your experience, again, don't forget you're going in reverse chronological order. If you guys are just making this resume for me, you are welcome to make up an externship site and put that there and kind of think about some things that your externship may provide for you guys. So think of some things that you may be doing at your externship, and you'll want to put that in the job duties here. If you are going to utilize this resume later, like I said, you don't want to make things up, so you can just put your previous job here. So your current job will go first if you have a job right now. If you don't have a job right now, you'll put whatever you held before this. People without experience, I do recommend putting your externship on there, again, because it does qualify as that experience. So if you don't have a lot of job experience, do not worry. We do have different ways that you can fill out that one page. You can use, like I said, you can make a classes section, and you can add to that education section. You can add the classes that you have or will have at ATA, and that helps to fill out the resume a little bit too. It does not have to be perfect. I just want you guys to make sure you're utilizing a lot of the things we learned with Microsoft Word today. So make sure you're using those different things: the header, columns, bullets, borders, font. Those are the things you really want to focus on. Create a resume for me and simply just send it to my email. You are not going to be graded on grammar or anything of that nature. You're just getting credit for doing it. So it does not have to be perfect. I just want to make sure that we're taking into account the things that we learned today. So have fun with this. So just create that resume for me, and then email that to me by the end of the week, and that will count as your participation and your attendance for this week. If you guys have questions, you guys know, feel free to reach out to me at any point. Send me an email, send me a text. I'm here for you, and I will see you guys soon.